Hello, my name is Mr. Charlie, and my son cut me out of his wedding, but that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came later when I made a choice that would change everything. I changed his will. Overnight. You see, my family had been hiding things from me for years, taking what was mine, making sure I was always the last to know. They thought they could humiliate me at his wedding, but I got the last laugh. What they didn't expect was that I'd fight back. And now they have no idea what's coming next. Trust me, you won't believe what happens when the tables turn, and I sat there, in the quiet of my living room, staring out the window at the dusty suburban streets of Houston. The sun had just begun its descent, casting long shadows over the well-kept lawns and two-story homes. I had lived here for over 20 years in this quiet neighborhood, hoping for peace after years of hard work. I'd been a proud father, a man who sacrificed everything for his children, especially for my son. But today I was lost in thought. The phone call I just received still felt like a slap to the face. It was my son, the one I raised, worked for, poured all my energy into. The one who had promised to make me proud, the one I'd hoped would be standing by my side on his wedding day. But instead I was cut out completely. No invite, not even a word of explanation. I had always believed in family, loyalty, love, and sacrifice. These were the values I lived by. I thought that's what I had taught him. I guess I was wrong. I closed my eyes, letting the memory flood my mind. There was the conversation we had months ago when he told me I wouldn't be a part of his big day. His words still echoed in my ears, clear as day. Dad, we decided it's better this way. Better this way. For whom? Certainly not for me. He had told me it was a family decision, but I knew better. It was just easier to pretend I didn't exist. I tried to stay calm, but that was hard. For years I'd been the rock, the foundation of this family. I worked my hands to the bone to provide, and now to be dismissed so easily. It was an insult I couldn't ignore. My son's wedding day was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life, but now it was just a reminder of everything I had given up and everything I'd never receive in return. As I reflected on that moment, my heart sank. I had always been there for him through thick and thin. He was my only son, my legacy, and now I wasn't even good enough to attend his wedding. I wondered if it was something I had done. Did I say something wrong? Did I fail him somewhere along the way? Or was this just the final blow of a long string of disrespect? The pain was sharp. It burned in the pit of my stomach. I had sacrificed too much for this family. My hopes for my son were boundless, yet now all I had were memories of late-night talks, of giving everything I had to make sure he had opportunities I never had. I thought back to his childhood. I thought about how hard I worked to give him the things I didn't have: a house, food, a future. Yet none of that seemed to matter now. I stood up from the chair, pacing around the room. My mind was a storm. My son had done this, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't going to be the passive father who simply took this hit. No, I was a man, a proud black man, who had earned his place in this world. I wasn't going to be treated like this. Not by him, not by anyone. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. What could I do? What was the right thing to do? It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything. My son's disregard for me had opened up a wound I didn't know was there. For years I had taken the back seat, quietly enduring. But not anymore. In that moment, something inside of me shifted. I was tired of being the one who always gave. I was tired of putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. My mind raced and a plan began to form. I walked over to the desk where I kept important papers, the will. I had written it years ago, thinking it was a simple way to ensure my children would be taken care of. But now, as I looked at the paper, I realized something. I didn't owe them anything. If they couldn't respect me, if they couldn't value everything I had done, then they would have to deal with the consequences. I wasn't going to wait any longer for my son to come to his senses. I would take action. I walked over to the filing cabinet and pulled out the legal documents. I didn't even hesitate. I sat down at the desk and began to make the changes, rewriting everything. My son had taken me for granted, and now it was time for him to realize what that would cost him. For a moment, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't just about money. It was about power. It was about taking back control, something I had long since lost in the shuffle of parenthood, marriage, and life. But as I made the final change, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deep down had shifted in me. Was this really what I wanted? Was this how I wanted to handle things? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was doing this for myself. For once, I wasn't going to let my family walk all over me. This was my moment, my legacy. The phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from my son. My heart sank as I read the words. "You've done it now, haven't you? You've crossed the line. You've made it about money, not family." His words hit me like a slap. I had known he would be angry, but to hear it, to read it in black and white, it felt like a punch to the gut. He didn't get it. He didn't understand. Still, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. He'd shown me exactly what I needed to see. The betrayal wasn't just from the wedding snub. It had been a long time coming. And now, as I sat there with the will in my hands, I realized there was no going back. The damage was done. The air felt thick in the room, and the weight of my decision hung heavy over me. The message from my son still stung, biting at my pride. He thought I was selfish, manipulative, but I had done what I had to do. It wasn't just about the will, it was about making a stand. I sat back in my old leather chair, the one I'd bought with my first real paycheck. The chair had seen so many of my thoughts, my joys, and my disappointments. It was familiar, a symbol of the work I had done to build this life, this family. But now, all of it seemed like it was slipping through my fingers. I could still feel the anger rising in me, but there was also a deep sadness. I thought about the years I'd spent raising him, my son. His smile when he was a kid, the way he looked at me like I was his hero. I used to be his world. Now I was just an afterthought, a distant memory to be pushed aside. For years, I sacrificed for him. I worked every shift, missed out on weekends, missed seeing his first steps, his first words, all because I wanted to give him a better life. I made sure he had opportunities I never had. I did it for him. And yet, here I was, excluded, not even invited to his wedding. My hand trembled slightly as I took the paper out of the drawer again. The will. The document that could change everything. But as I read through it again, I felt the gravity of what I had done. The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I didn't want to feel like I had to beg for my own family's respect. This wasn't just about wealth, it was about dignity. If my son couldn't show me the respect I deserved, then he would not get a dime of what I had worked so hard for. I had always told myself that family came first, that no matter what, blood would always be thicker than water. But in this moment, I saw things clearly. The truth was, family doesn't always work that way. Sometimes family betrays you, and sometimes it's not about revenge, it's about respect. And the simple truth was, he didn't respect me. As I sat there letting the weight of the decision sink in, memories from years past started flooding my mind. The birthdays I missed because I had to work, the times I stayed late at the office only to come home to an empty house, the quiet dinners where he barely spoke to me, always on his phone or wrapped up in his own world. These moments, these small, seemingly insignificant moments, piled up over the years. I had given everything for him. Everything. And yet now, I was nothing more than a footnote in his life. I stared at the will again. No one in my family would benefit from my estate unless they showed true respect. I had to make this change. For my own peace of mind, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was tired of being overlooked, tired of being treated like I didn't matter. The anger inside me was bubbling up again, but this time, it wasn't about the money. It was about showing my son that he couldn't just walk all over me. It was about standing my ground. He would learn the hard way. I picked up the phone and called the lawyer. His voice was calm when he answered, but I could feel the tension in the air. I told him exactly what I needed. I want the changes finalized. It's time. My son understands the value of respect. The lawyer hesitated for a moment, probably trying to gauge if I was serious. But I was, dead serious. I sat back in the chair, staring at the wall. The decision was made. It felt final. And yet, a small part of me questioned if I had gone too far. Could I take it back? Would my son ever forgive me? I had no answers. But I knew one thing. This was the only way for me to finally be heard. The phone rang again, pulling me out of my thoughts. I looked at the screen. It was my daughter. She was worried. She had always been the one who understood me, but this time I wasn't sure she would. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice soft. "Are you okay? What's going on with the wedding situation?" I sighed. "I'm fine, just I had to make a decision." I could hear the concern in her voice, and for a moment I wondered if I had done the right thing. But the way she said it, like she didn't fully understand, made me feel even more isolated. "Dad," she continued, "I don't know if this is the right way to handle it. You've worked so hard for him, but I don't want to see you push him away for good." I paused. My throat felt tight. "It's too late for that, sweetheart. He's already pushed me away." She was quiet for a moment, processing what I had said. Then, with a soft voice, she said, "I understand, Dad, but be careful. He might never forgive you." I didn't know if her words were meant to comfort me or caution me. Either way, the realization that I had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed, hit me like a freight train. I had done what I needed to do, but at what cost? My son may never understand. Just as I was about to put the phone down, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was. I had been expecting this moment, but I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I opened the door slowly. There he was, my son. The tension in the air was palpable. He looked at me, his eyes filled with anger, but there was something else there. Regret, perhaps. It was hard to tell. He spoke first. His words were sharp. "You think this will make me respect you? It's just money, old man. You've never been there for me." His words hit me harder than I expected. They cut deep. All the memories of his childhood, the love I gave, the sacrifices I made, they all felt like they meant nothing now. I stood tall, refusing to let my emotions take over. "I did what I had to do," I said, my voice steady. "And if you can't respect that, then maybe we're both better off." The silence hung between us. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. I wasn't sure what to say anymore. I wasn't sure there was anything left to say. The night stretched long, and the silence in the house was deafening. I sat in my recliner, the weight of the decision I had made settling in deeper with each passing minute. The will was changed, and now the consequences were at my doorstep. I thought about my son, about the man he had become, and about the man I was trying not to be. As much as I tried to justify my actions, I couldn't escape the feeling of conflict. I wasn't angry. Well, not just angry. It was something deeper, something colder. I had been dismissed, discarded as if I didn't matter. But the anger wasn't the only thing gnawing at me. There was guilt, too. I had spent my entire life building my family, keeping it together, and now I was doing this. Was it right? Was it fair? But then again, no one ever gave me a reason to feel like I mattered. My own son had pushed me away. Was this really about the money, or was it about something else? Was it about showing him that respect wasn't a given, that it had to be earned? The realization hit me hard. The weight of the decision I had made felt like a ton of bricks pressing down on my chest. I wasn't backing down. No matter what happened, this was the line I had drawn, and I was going to stand behind it. If my son didn't understand, then so be it. That night, I barely slept. The thoughts of what was to come, the fallout, kept me awake. I couldn't help but picture the confrontation, imagining the look on his face when he found out. Would he fight me? Would he cry? I didn't know anymore, and I didn't think I cared. I had to do what was best for me. For once, I wasn't going to sacrifice myself for someone else's happiness. The morning brought no peace. The silence was still there, suffocating. I had made my peace with the decision, but the consequences, they were just beginning. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed something at my door. A letter. My son's handwriting. I paused for a moment, staring at the envelope as if it might hold the answers to everything I had been asking myself all night. I opened it slowly, almost afraid of what I would find. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. Dad, I can't believe you did this. You've cut me out of your life, and now you're doing this too. I don't even know what to say. I thought you loved me. Why would you do this to me? It was a desperate plea, a last-ditch effort to reach out to me. He was hurt, but I wasn't sure if I could feel sorry for him anymore. This wasn't just about hurt. It was about disrespect, a disrespect that had been building for years. I stood there for a long time, the letter shaking in my hands. It wasn't the apology I was hoping for. It wasn't the recognition of all the sacrifices I had made. It was just more of the same. My son still didn't get it, and I knew, deep down, he probably never would. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. I had made my decision. There was no going back now. I was done being the one to apologize, to beg for someone's love. This was about me now. This was about standing up for myself, about showing my son that respect wasn't something I was just going to give away. I drove to my son's house that afternoon. The tension in the air was thick, almost palpable. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight as I parked in front of his place. I hadn't seen him in weeks. The wedding was just the latest blow in a series of moments where he made it clear I wasn't important to him anymore. I stood outside for a moment, gathering myself. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew it had to be said. I had to confront him. I wasn't going to let him control the narrative anymore. I walked up to the door and knocked. When he opened it, the look on his face was one of disbelief, followed by a quick flash of anger. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice cold. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady, though inside I was anything but calm. "We need to talk about what happened with the wedding. And about the will." His eyes narrowed. "What about the will?" he snapped. "You really think this is going to fix anything? You think this is going to make me respect you?" I took a deep breath, letting the words come out slowly, deliberately. "I changed the will," I said, meeting his gaze. "Because respect is something you need to earn. And right now, you've shown me none." His face twisted in disbelief. "You did what?" he asked, taking a step back. "Are you serious? This is about money? You're going to make me respect you with money?" I didn't flinch. "It's not about money," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "It's about respect. Something you seem to think is a given, something you think you can take for granted." He shook his head. "You're doing this out of spite. You're just angry because I didn't want you at my wedding." "I'm angry because you've been disrespecting me for years," I said, my voice rising a little. "And I'm done taking it. I'm done being invisible to you." His face turned red. "You're unbelievable. You've never been there for me. Not really. And now you're pulling this." His words hit me, but they didn't break me. They couldn't. Not anymore. "I was there when you needed me," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm done being the one who always has to make sacrifices. I'm done." He took a step forward, his anger boiling over. "You think this is going to fix everything? You think I'll just come around because you changed the will?" I stood tall, my mind made up. "No," I said simply. "But I'm not backing down. If you want to fix things, it starts with respect. You want me in your life? Then show me that respect. Until then, this is where we stand." His anger was palpable, but so was something else. Regret, maybe. I wasn't sure. But in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened next, I wasn't going to be the one to make the first move anymore. Not this time. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a long time, the echo of his footsteps fading into the silence. I wasn't sure what I felt in that moment. Anger? Relief? Pain? Maybe all three. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to beg. Not anymore. The morning of the court hearing arrived, and I felt the weight of it all bearing down on me. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the man I had become, an old man, but one who had finally found his strength. Today would determine the rest of my life. I had always worked hard for my family, sacrificed more than most could understand, and now it was time to fight for what was mine. I thought about all those years, my years of sacrifice, my tireless work, the long nights spent worrying about my children, trying to give them everything. And this is what I got in return. The phone rang just as I was about to grab my coat. It was my lawyer. "Mr. Charlie," his voice crackled through the line. "There's a complication. Your son's lawyer has found a loophole in the will. If it's not handled correctly, the entire document could be invalidated." The blood drained from my face. It was like a punch to the gut. My mind raced. I had spent sleepless nights planning for this, and now the whole thing was on the verge of crumbling. But there was no turning back now. I wasn't going to let my son or anyone else take what was mine. Not this time. I took a deep breath. "What do we need to do?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to go over everything carefully. This could get ugly," my lawyer replied. The phone call ended, but the unease lingered. My mind kept going over the details, the will, my son's betrayal, the path that had led me here. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The court hearing was a short drive away. As I pulled into the parking lot, I could feel my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. The nerves were there, but there was something else too. A deep resolve, a quiet confidence. I had come this far. I wasn't going to lose now. Inside the courtroom, everything felt surreal. The air was thick with tension as I walked in, my eyes scanning the room. I could see my son across the room, his posture stiff and distant, like a stranger. His lawyer was seated next to him, a smug, well-dressed man with a sharp, calculating gaze. I took my seat, trying to steady my breathing. I was prepared for what was to come, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping away. The judge called the proceedings to order, and the trial began. My lawyer made his opening statement, but I could barely focus on the words. My mind kept drifting back to my son. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, and about showing my son that I wasn't someone to be taken for granted. And then it came. The first bombshell. My son's lawyer stood up and with a smirk, presented a new piece of evidence, an email from my lawyer, which suggested that I had been coerced into changing the will. The courtroom seemed to freeze as everyone turned to look at me. The accusation was absurd. I hadn't been coerced. I had made the decision on my own, but the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. The room was buzzing now, the tension palpable. My son sat there, his face a mask of anger and resentment. I tried to keep my cool, but I could feel the pressure mounting. My heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about my legacy anymore. It was about fighting for my dignity. The lawyer continued to present his arguments, but I didn't hear most of it. I was too focused on my son, who now seemed like a stranger sitting on the other side of the courtroom. As the lawyer finished, I could feel the weight of all those years of sacrifice pressing down on me. But I wasn't about to let it end like this, not after everything I'd been through. "Mr. Charlie," the judge called, "do you have anything to add?" It was my turn. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff, but I kept my head high. The room seemed to go silent. I wasn't sure if I was shaking, but my voice was steady as I spoke. "I did not change the will out of spite," I said, my words clear. "I changed it because respect is earned, not given. I've worked my entire life for my family, and this This is the price I'm paying for being overlooked, for being invisible. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. I could feel the shift in the room, the eyes of everyone on me. I didn't look at my son. I didn't need to. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. There was no going back. After a moment of silence, the courtroom erupted. My son's lawyer was quick to object, but I didn't care. I had said what needed to be said. The trial continued, and it became clear that the attack wasn't going to stop. My son's lawyer turned the heat up, digging into my past, questioning everything about my relationship with my son. It was a low blow, but I had seen this coming. He wanted to paint me as the villain, the one who hadn't been there, the one who had failed. The lawyer's voice echoed in the room. Mister, Charlie's actions now are nothing more than a final attempt at control. If he had been a better father, his son wouldn't have to fight for his inheritance. The words stung. They cut deep. But I wasn't going to let them break me. I stood tall, refusing to show any weakness. My son's lawyer didn't know me. He didn't know the sacrifices I had made. But I wasn't going to waste my time defending myself to someone who would never understand. I felt the burn of betrayal in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't here to beg for understanding. I was here to take back what was mine. Later in the trial, when the opportunity arose, I took the stand. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. I spoke slowly, each word measured as I detailed the life I had built and the pain I had endured. I spoke of my sacrifices, of the dreams I had for my family, and the way I had been ignored, dismissed, and overlooked. Then I did something I wasn't expecting to do. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a letter I had written to my son years ago, filled with my thoughts, my struggles, and my hopes for him. I began to read aloud. I worked hard for you. I gave you everything I could. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible to you. The silence that followed my words was deafening. I could feel the weight of them, like a shift in the room. The impact was immediate. For a moment, no one spoke. Even my son's lawyer seemed speechless. But it wasn't enough. The battle wasn't over yet. As the judge prepared to give the final verdict, my lawyer leaned in and whispered something that made my heart skip a beat. "The judge knows your son," he said quietly. "He's family." I froze. A chill ran down my spine. My son had more influence in this courtroom than I had ever imagined. My heart sank as I realized that the battle I had fought might not be enough. The weight of the ongoing legal battle was starting to wear me thin. I'd never imagined how much strain it would put on me, mentally and physically. But as I sat alone in my living room that morning, the quiet tension in the air was almost suffocating. The court hearing had been the focal point for weeks, and I knew that the end was nearing. But the emotional toll, the stress of being in a fight that was bigger than just money, it was about my dignity, was starting to get to me. Then the phone rang. It was a call I wasn't expecting, and when I heard the voice on the other end, I knew this was going to be trouble. My sister-in-law, someone I thought I could trust, had leaked details of the court case to the press. Now, the world knew about the battle for my inheritance. The headlines screamed about father and son at war, about a man trying to control his legacy. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The betrayal hit hard. This wasn't just about the case anymore. This was about my privacy being stripped away, my family's dirty laundry aired for everyone to see. The humiliation stung. My son had already torn apart our relationship. Now someone from within the family had gone behind my back and made sure the world saw me as a villain. It was all out in the open now. The stakes had never been higher. Not only was I fighting for my legacy, but I was also fighting for my dignity. I pushed myself up from the couch and went to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. The birds were chirping, the sun was shining, but inside I felt like everything was slowly crumbling. I couldn't let them break me, though. Not now. Not after everything I'd already endured. I had come too far. My resolve had to be stronger than ever. The next few days only made things worse. At a family gathering, I tried to discuss the trial. I needed support, needed someone to stand by me, but all I got was silence. My children, my own flesh and blood, turned their backs on me. My daughter, the one person who had always been on my side, gave me the cold shoulder. Her eyes were distant, and when I asked her about it, she told me she'd heard my son's version of events. Just like that, I realized the truth. My family was divided. The people I thought I could count on had been swayed by my son's lies. I was left standing alone in a room full of strangers I once called my family. "Dad, you've got to understand," my daughter said, her voice low. "He's not wrong." Her words stung more than anything. I had given everything for this family, and they were turning their backs on me. But I wasn't about to beg. I didn't need them to understand. What I needed was for them to see the truth, but I knew that wouldn't happen. The divide was too deep. I left the gathering early that day, the anger and sadness building in my chest. It was a pain I couldn't shake, but I wasn't going to let it defeat me. Later that evening, I met with my son. It wasn't an easy decision, but I needed to face him. I had to know why he was doing this to me. The confrontation was inevitable. We sat in his living room, the air thick with tension. There were no pleasantries, just a cold silence hanging between us. I watched his eyes full of resentment, but there was something else there too, something I hadn't expected. It was fear. "I'm not here to fight, son," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to understand why you're doing this." He looked away for a moment before meeting my gaze again, his voice rising with anger. "You don't get it, do you? I've been struggling for years. The inheritance, it's all I've got left. It could set me up for life. You don't even care, do you?" His words hit harder than I expected. I had always believed that he was driven by respect, by the love I had given him. But it was never about that. It was about money. About what I could give him, not who I was. "I'm not going to give you anything until you show me some respect," I said, my voice low but firm. "Respect isn't a handout, it's earned." But even as I said those words, I knew the truth. I wasn't just fighting for respect. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity, to prove that I wasn't invisible. But it hurt. More than anything, it hurt that my son had reduced me to this. He shook his head, frustration evident in every line of his face. "You're making a mistake, old man. This is all just a power play for you." The words stung, but I didn't let them show. I stood up slowly, my hands clenched at my sides. "You don't understand, do you? This isn't about control. It's about me finally taking a stand. You've taken too much from me." With that, he stormed out. The door slammed behind him, and I stood there in the silence, listening to my heartbeat. I wasn't sure if I'd ever see him again, but in that moment, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let him tear me apart. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept to myself, trying to piece together the mess my son had made of everything. As I sat at my desk, I finally did it. I went through the will again, looking for something, anything that might help me fight back. That's when I found it. A hidden clause I'd put in years ago, one that could change everything. It was the key to winning this battle, but I couldn't reveal it yet, not until the right moment. I spent hours thinking about how to use it, how to turn the tables on my son and show him that I wasn't just some fool he could push around. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about showing him and the rest of my family that I had a voice and I would be heard. The calm before the storm settled over me. The day before the final court hearing, I took a moment to reflect. It had been a long road, one filled with sacrifices, pain, and regret. But I wasn't going to back down. I had fought for my family my entire life. Now I was fighting for me. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was a family friend, someone who had been with me through thick and thin. As we talked, they reminded me of the strength I'd shown throughout my life. That was what I needed to hear. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for everything I'd ever worked for. "I've been through worse," I said, the words coming out more to myself than to my friend. I've stood tall when the world wanted me to fall, and I'll do it again. Just as I was about to leave for the courthouse, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer. "There's a tip," he said. "Something in the will, something deeper. A betrayal even more personal than you ever realized." The tip was vague, but I felt the tension build again. My heart raced, my mind spinning with the possibilities. What was this secret, and how would it change everything? The final decision was almost upon me, and now, more than ever, I knew that nothing was certain. This battle was far from over. The morning of the final court hearing had arrived. I'd spent the last few days going over every single detail of my case, every document, every argument. The tension had been building for weeks, and now, the moment I'd dreaded and perhaps even hoped for was here. I wasn't ready to back down, but the emotional cost was getting harder to bear. I thought about everything I'd sacrificed, every moment of struggle, every decision that had led me to this point. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore, I was fighting for respect. I was fighting to be seen, to reclaim my dignity. But the stakes were higher than ever. The court hearing would determine whether my legacy would live on as I'd planned, or if my son would tear it all apart. Just as I was preparing myself, the phone rang. My lawyer's name flashed on the screen. "It's your son," he said. "He's found a way to challenge the will. There's a loophole. This isn't over yet." A pit formed in my stomach. All my careful planning, all my years of hard work, could still be undone by a technicality. I took a deep breath, feeling a cold chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about the money, it was about who I was, about who I had been to my family. I couldn't let it all slip away now. The courtroom was packed when I walked in. My son was sitting across the room, his face as cold and hard as stone. He didn't even look up when I entered. There was no warmth, no recognition of the man who had spent his life building a future for him. I wasn't sure if it was the years of resentment or the pressure of the case, but I felt more alone than I ever had before. As the lawyer began his opening statements, I couldn't help but notice how my son's lawyer tried to steer the narrative. I knew what was coming. Lies, manipulation. It was in his blood. But what struck me wasn't just the legal back and forth. No, it was when I realized something. My son had been working behind the scenes to sway the judge, to manipulate the entire situation. I wasn't just battling him, I was fighting his machinations. But in that moment, something clicked. An old family friend, someone I'd known for years, came to my side. They had been watching the case closely and had gathered information I didn't even know about. It wasn't just the law I had to worry about anymore. It was the people behind it, pulling strings to twist things in their favor. I had my work cut out for me. "Your Honor, I have evidence that contradicts my son's claims," my lawyer said, breaking my thoughts. "There are emails, from his own account, emails that prove his manipulation." The courtroom went silent, the weight of those words hanging heavy in the air. I could see the shock in my son's eyes as the emails were presented. He had no words, no defense. For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. He'd been caught. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few moments felt like an eternity. My son's lawyer tried to backpedal, scrambling for a counter-argument, but it was too late. The truth had already been exposed. I watched my son's face as the realization set in. He had been caught in his own lie, but instead of triumph, a heavy sadness filled me. This wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't a victory. It was just the brutal honesty of a father who had been betrayed by the very person he'd sacrificed for. After the courtroom drama, I found myself standing outside, waiting for my daughter to meet me. She'd been caught in the middle of this mess for too long, and I could see the toll it was taking on her. When she arrived, I tried to offer some comfort, but she was distant. The warmth that had once been there between us was gone, replaced with a coldness I couldn't ignore. "I don't know what to do anymore," she confessed, looking away. "He's my brother." "But what you're saying, it's hard to ignore." I didn't have an answer for her. How could I? The family I had built, the one I had fought for all these years, was falling apart before my eyes. And the truth was, there was nothing I could do to fix it. The bond we once had was shattered, and now all that was left was a broken family. I know it's hard, I said softly, but you can't let him drag you down too. You have to make your own choices. She looked at me then, eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Dad. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll try. I just don't know how. I didn't have the strength to tell her everything would be okay. I didn't know that myself. The day was wearing on, and the courtroom drama was far from over. As the final moments of the trial approached, I stood at the edge of the courtroom, watching as the final pieces fell into place. My son had tried to break me. He'd tried to tear down everything I had worked for, everything I had loved. But I wasn't going to let him. Not now, not ever. I walked into the courtroom one last time. This was it, the final chance to make my stand. The judge looked at me, his eyes cold. I took a deep breath. I've spent my life giving everything I had for my family, I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. But at the end of the day, it's not about what I leave behind. It's about who I am. And I've earned the right to be seen. Just as I finished, a figure stepped into the courtroom. My heart skipped a beat. It was someone I didn't expect, a surprise witness, a piece of evidence that could change everything. The room fell silent as they made their way to the stand. My lawyer's eyes widened in disbelief. It was a final twist. One I wasn't ready for, but one I knew could change everything. But as the judge began to deliberate, I felt my phone buzz. A private message flashed on the screen. Your son is gone. He's gone into hiding. I didn't know what that meant. What was he planning? What did he know? I sat back in my chair, anxiety washing over me. The battle was far from over. The days leading up to the final court battle were filled with both anxiety and anticipation. As I sat in my office, the papers spread out before me. I couldn't help but feel a heavy weight on my shoulders. This was it, the moment I had been fighting for, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more at play than I could see. I had prepared myself for this day, but as the time approached, my mind couldn't help but race through every possibility, every potential outcome. I went over my notes, making sure I had everything in place. The strategy had been clear from the start. Be patient, let the lies unfold, and then strike when the moment was right. The hours spent reflecting had given me a deep calmness, though my thoughts were tinged with a quiet determination. The fight had been long, and I had already given more than anyone should. But it wasn't over yet, not until the final word was spoken. Then the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, but urgent. You're not going to believe this, Mr. Charlie, my lawyer said. We've just received a new piece of evidence. A family friend has come forward. It's a game changer. My heart skipped a beat. A family friend? One of the few people I trusted in this mess. This could be the moment that tipped everything in my favor. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly smothered by the reality of the situation. There was no time to waste. I had to be ready. The trial resumed the following morning. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. I entered the room, every inch of me poised, every step measured. Across the room, my son sat with his lawyer, a look of cold defiance on his face. He had never looked more distant. This wasn't the boy I had raised. This was a man who had become a stranger to me. My lawyer took his seat beside me, and the proceedings began. The judge's stern face was enough to make anyone uneasy, but I'd been through worse. I was prepared. And then, as the trial unfolded, my son made a move. It was desperate, calculated, a final attempt to discredit me. He claimed that I was manipulating the court, that my changes to the will were the result of coercion, not free will. It almost worked. Almost. But I wasn't about to let him tear down everything I'd worked for. I stood tall and locked eyes with the judge. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady. The truth will out, no matter how many lies are spun. My lawyer rose with confidence, presenting the new evidence, the hidden clause that could shift everything in my favor. The courtroom went silent as the weight of the evidence sank in. My son's face went pale as the truth unfolded. He had been manipulating the situation, using lies and deceit to get what he wanted. I could see the panic in his eyes, but I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The tension between my son and me was palpable as we faced off one final time. This was it, the culmination of everything that had led to this moment. But there was still more to uncover. And then, just as I thought the worst was behind me, something unexpected happened. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, stood up in the middle of the proceedings, her voice shaking as she spoke. "I can't keep lying anymore," she said, looking directly at me. "I've been pressured by him, by my brother, to stay quiet. But the truth has to come out." The words hit me like a freight train. My own daughter, the one person who had always stood by my side, had been manipulated. The betrayal was deeper than I thought. For a moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Was there anyone I could trust? Was this all a game to my son? I tried to hold it together as she spoke, but it was hard. The trial had already torn apart my family, and now my daughter was confirming my worst fears. The divide between us was wider than I had ever imagined. As my daughter left the courtroom, I stood there, reeling from the revelation. The pain was unbearable, but I had to stay focused. I couldn't let them win. Not now. The final moments of the trial were approaching, and I knew this was my last chance. I stood and addressed the court, my voice strong but filled with emotion. I spoke of the sacrifices I had made, of the love I had given, and of the injustice that had been done to me. But just as I was about to finish, a surprise witness entered the courtroom. The room went still as the witness took the stand. It was someone I had never expected, someone who could confirm everything I had suspected about my son's actions. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The bombshell testimony shook the courtroom, and my son's defense crumbled. For once, the truth was on my side. But even as I won this battle, the victory didn't feel as sweet as I had imagined. I had exposed my son's deceit, but at what cost? My family was broken beyond repair, and no matter how much I had won in the courtroom, I had lost something far more precious: my relationship with my children. The judge took a long time deliberating. Every second felt like an eternity. I sat in the silence, waiting for the final ruling, knowing that my fate, and the fate of my legacy, was in the hands of a stranger. When the judge finally spoke, it was a mixed decision. I had won a significant portion of the case, but there were still unresolved issues that would haunt my family for years to come. My son, though defeated in court, walked away with his pride intact. He wasn't done fighting, and I knew it. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief, but it was overshadowed by the emptiness inside. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message that stopped me cold. "Your son is gone. He's disappeared." I didn't know what to make of it. Where had he gone? What did this mean for me, for our family? My heart raced as I stood frozen, the weight of the unknown settling heavily on my shoulders. I had won, yes, but the battle wasn't over. It was just the beginning. I sat alone in my living room, the silence pressing down on me as I gazed at the piles of papers scattered across the table. The legal battle had drained me, but now, more than ever, I needed to confront what had been lost. The years, the sacrifices, the quiet pain of being overlooked, it all led me to this moment. I thought about my son, the boy I raised with such hope and love, and what had happened between us. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity, respect, things that should have been a given, but were stripped away in this cold, ugly fight. I could still picture the days when things were different, when he would sit on my lap, telling me about his dreams. I remember teaching him to ride a bike, watching him stumble, then get up again. Back then, it seemed like everything was possible. But somewhere along the way, he had changed. We had both changed. A flashback hit me. One of those moments from years ago when I was proud of him. I remember his first job. I helped him with his resume, sat him down for that talk about what it meant to be a man, a provider. I had no idea then that the man he'd become would betray me, using me as a stepping stone, discarding the values I'd worked so hard to instill. But now, this fight, this final stand, was about me, not about the will, not about the inheritance, but about claiming the respect I was owed. The reality of that hit me in waves. I couldn't change him, but I could change myself. That realization brought a strange peace. It was time to face him. The day came when my son and I were finally going to speak, face to face. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There was too much pain, too many years of neglect, resentment, and anger stacked between us. The silence in the room when we stood across from each other was almost suffocating. He looked at me with cold eyes, no trace of the boy I once knew. A man, yes, but a stranger now. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" His response came with bitterness, his words sharp. "I did what I had to do for myself, for my future. You should have understood that." The arrogance in his voice nearly made me lose my composure, but I didn't. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "No," I said, my voice firm. "That's not how it works. Family, love, respect, those come first. Nothing justifies treating someone like they don't matter." My words hung in the air, a direct hit to the person he had become. There it was, the reckoning. The words that had been trapped inside me for so long finally released. This wasn't just about the will. This wasn't even just about the past. This was about who we had become and where we'd gone wrong. And though his eyes hardened, I knew that my words had struck a chord. "I don't need your forgiveness," he spat, his face reddening. "I'll sever all ties. You can keep your damn inheritance. Just let it go." I stood my ground. "I won't let you walk all over me anymore." It was like a weight lifted off my chest, the tension that had been building between us for years finally breaking. He could say what he wanted, but the damage had been done. The bond we once had was shattered, and I wasn't going to fight for something that wasn't there anymore. But as I walked away from that conversation, I realized something. I didn't need to keep fighting for the inheritance, for the money that had caused all this pain. I had something more important to do, something that would define me, not the battle I'd been consumed by. The next day, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I went to my lawyer and instructed him to donate a significant portion of the inheritance to a charity that helps people who've been wronged in the way I had. I didn't want it. It wasn't worth the cost of losing my peace, my dignity, or my soul. When I told my son what I'd done, he was furious. His anger matched his disbelief. "You can't be serious," he yelled. "You're giving it all away?" I looked him in the eye. "You'll never understand, but maybe one day you will." And with that, I turned and walked away. Later, I received a call from my ex-wife. I hadn't heard from her in years, not since the divorce, but she called to offer her support. "You did the right thing," she said. "Even if our son can't see it now, you did what was best, and I'm proud of you for it." It felt like a small sliver of redemption. I knew that my family was forever changed, that the bond we once had would never be restored. But for the first time in a long while, I felt lighter. There would be no more fighting. It was time to heal, to move forward. But as I sat down that night, alone with my thoughts, I received an unexpected letter. The charity I donated to had written to thank me for my generosity. But there was more. The letter hinted that my son might be involved with a shady figure from the past, someone who could come back to haunt us all. The weight of the words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat there reading the letter, my mind racing. What had my son gotten himself into now? The fight might have been over, but the war wasn't. Not by a long shot. I sat in the quiet of my home, reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The court battles, the betrayals, the pain of seeing my own flesh and blood turn against me. It all weighed heavily on my heart. But now, with the dust beginning to settle, I found myself at a crossroads. I had fought for my dignity, for my respect. But what came next? The fight for the inheritance, the legal battles. It was all behind me now. I had to ask myself if I had done the right thing, if this battle had been worth it. But deep down, I knew that the battle wasn't just about money, it was about who I was, what I stood for, and whether I could look myself in the mirror and be proud of the man I'd become. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was an old friend of mine, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. He reminded me of the man I used to be, the man who fought for his community, who stood up for what was right. His words were like a breath of fresh air. He spoke with such clarity, telling me I had done the right thing all along. His reminder of my true worth reignited something inside me, something I thought had died in the years of conflict. I realized that I had lost sight of who I was for a while, but now, in this quiet moment, I could feel the resolve return. It was time to stop looking back and start moving forward. The weight of my past decisions still hung heavy, but I wasn't the same man who had walked into that courtroom. I was stronger now, not because of the victories I'd won, but because of the peace I'd found within myself. The past was the past, and I wasn't going to let it define my future. I knew there was one last thing I had to do, one final conversation with my son. This time, there would be no shouting, no accusations. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I knew it was time to speak the truth, to let him know how I felt. There was a finality in the air as I waited for him to arrive. I wasn't expecting anything from him. No apology, no grand revelation, just a chance to speak the truth one last time. When he walked through the door, he looked different. There was a weariness in his eyes, but the defensiveness was still there, a wall he had built to protect himself from the truth. I didn't need to tear him down. I had already been torn down too many times by him. I simply asked, "Why did you do it? Why did you betray me like that?" His response was cold, wrapped in bitterness. "I did what I thought was best for me. I didn't ask for any of this." There was no apology, no remorse, just a man justifying his actions as if he could erase the years of hurt. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't going to fight him. Instead, I looked him in the eyes and said, "Family, respect, love, those are the things that matter more than anything else. You'll learn that one day, if you're lucky. I just hope it's not too late for you." I didn't expect him to understand. I wasn't sure I understood either, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out there, and I had said what needed to be said. I wasn't looking for reconciliation, but I was looking for closure. I had given him everything, and now I was walking away from the hurt. After he left, I sat down, and the silence felt different, lighter somehow. But there was still a weight on my chest, a reminder that this battle had cost me. It had cost me my relationship with my son, the bond I had spent years building, but I had to forgive him, not because he deserved it, but because I did. I needed to forgive him for myself. As I reached for a box under my desk, my hands brushed against an old letter. It was from my wife, long gone, but her words had never left me. I opened the letter, the paper fragile, the ink faded. Her words were a balm to my soul. "Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace." Those words echoed in my mind. I couldn't change the past, but I could change how I moved forward. I wrote a letter to my son, one final letter telling him that I forgave him. I wasn't doing this for him. I was doing it for me. I couldn't keep carrying this weight. The door was closed on the past, but I wasn't leaving it locked. It was time to heal, to move forward. The days that followed were quiet. I didn't want to drag this out any longer. I had made my peace. I finalized my will, not for the money, but to ensure that when I was gone, my legacy was one of love, kindness, and compassion. I wasn't going to leave behind bitterness or hatred. I was going to leave behind a reminder of what truly mattered. And then, I did something unexpected. I donated a significant portion of my remaining assets to a charity that helps families torn apart by similar struggles. It was a moment of pure generosity, a decision that shocked everyone, especially my son. I wasn't going to let my hurt turn me into something I despised. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about making sure that something good came from all this pain. I received a call from my ex-wife, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She told me that she was proud of what I had done. Her support was a rare gift. It was a small victory, but it meant everything to me. It was a sign that, despite all the pain, I had done something right. But even as I sat there, feeling a sense of peace, a letter arrived that shook me to my core. The charity I had donated to had sent me a thank you letter, but there was something else, something troubling. The letter mentioned that my son might be involved with someone from his past, a figure who could come back and haunt all of us. The weight of the letter hit me hard. The battle might have been over, but the future was still uncertain. My son was still out there, and his choices were still affecting all of us. The past was behind me, but the future, that was a different story.